Today on the breakdown, it's one of the biggest pots of all time. Is that what we're saying? It might be what we're saying. In fact, we are saying it. I'm just spoiling it right now. It's one of the biggest pots literally ever played. It's from the Hustler Casino Live $1 Million Cash Game. It's Alan Keating against Raul, and man, both these guys flop huge, but they don't necessarily both play it like they flopped huge. And well, let's just say one of them has a very big decision on the river. A very big. What do you do when someone check raises you for $1 million? Well, we're going to get into it. We're going to look at all the aspects, all the facets, all the corners, all the angles right now on the breakdown with Grant Dennison and Jonathan Levy.
I don't think I'm ever gonna get check raised for $1 million. I don't think that's a likely thing.
They're too afraid of you. They'll never do it. They're too afraid.
No, that's exactly why. Like it's not that I'm not playing for those stakes. It is that they're like, this guy is gonna know exactly what to do in all these spots. Right. So that's why I'm not on the $1 Million Cash Game. They wouldn't let me play. I got blacklisted, kind of like Tom Dwan did.
I was gonna say this is actually a thing where even in the $1 Million game, the politics are big enough that Tom Dwan was not allowed to play, which is weird because isn't he the biggest name of them all for the cash game?
I would think he's the biggest draw. I know Keating's a big draw, but Dwan still has so much clout as a player that you want to watch, you know?
For sure. Dwan for sure I think has more clout than any of those guys. I think by a lot. For me, it's by a lot more.
Does he have the most clout of any cash game player for watching televised cash games?
Without thinking too hard about it, yes.
Yeah.
Maybe we could come up with somebody else, but who would that be?
Like,
Antonio
as of right now, I don't know.
Maybe Phil Hellmuth, maybe.
Maybe at one point it was Isildur at one point.
Maybe Daniel Negreanu in a really big cash game might have that clout. But there's not too many, and those guys don't play these stakes. Right. Only Tom Dwan plays stakes like this, and none of the other guys who play the stakes are nearly, for whatever reason, Tom Dwan built this reputation, 15 years ago, and he's always interesting to watch as a result. He just remains, I'm really fascinated to watch Tom Dwan play, much more so than almost everybody else, even the really good players.
Yeah.
So there is that. Yeah. But yeah, they apparently kept him out of playing for a while, and so he was out of the starting lineup on day 3, I think it was. Maybe it was day 4, who can remember? And and didn't get to play till like late. He missed like the first several hours and was not happy about it.
Well, I mean, wouldn't be happy either if I got like blackballed from a game that's like a super plus EV awesome game.
Yeah, maybe these guys, maybe all the people don't show up with all the money though if they know Dwan's going to be in it every night. So they're like, we want some time without Dwan, or otherwise I'm not going to come at all. And it's like, well, we need some very rich people, otherwise this game doesn't go, right? You need a few guys, which brings everybody else along, right? Because the really great players don't necessarily want to just play against each other for millions of dollars. They have no interest in that, right?
Yeah, that's true. It's true. It is. I mean, there's reasons for these things. It's cash. The social and financial components of cash games are really interesting when compared to tournaments because it depends on the situation. Obviously, $1 Million Cash Game is like almost an international game, but like within a card room, the dynamics of like who plays in the cash game and if they're going to play the 5-5 game when they get called and who's at the table and stuff. You just never have to think about that in tournaments. You just buy your tournament buy-in and hope you get a good table, and you have to play with whoever you have to play with.
Yeah.
And like, for me at least, when the bigger games get going at our like local club, I always have this fear of like the game breaking, there's always this fear that like the vibe is not going to be good enough, or there's going to be too nitty of play or something, and then the players who make the game good are going to leave and it's going to suck. And there's always that like added layer of, we have to make the game good for the players who will put money in the pot at all times in order to have the higher stakes game.
It just depends on the day and the dynamic too. I remember playing in the higher stakes games, which are not that high in fairness, in the Portland card rooms last year even, and we were playing and the games like dropped down to 4-handed, dropped down to 3-handed, and finally it was just me and another guy. We played heads up for a solid hour or so before finally the game started to fill up again, and then filled all the way back up, and then everything was back. But and I was like, this is a great guy to be playing heads up against. Like, I felt so lucky, although I did lose. But still, I felt like, well, it was a great spot, and that's all you can really ask for in poker, is the spot.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, people hurt my feelings in cash games sometimes. They don't want to play sometimes. It's hurtful. But, I do not put a lot of money in with ace 4 off under the gun, and that's what they want me to do.
They do. They absolutely do want that. And
Yeah.
you don't. Yeah.
No. But you know who does? Alan Keating.
Oh my God. Alan Keating plays so many hands. So many hands. Although I will say in this $1 million cash game, I think his ranges are much more normalized than what we're used to of like, King Deuce offsuit and stuff like that. Like I don't think he's doing any of that in the $1 million cash
The
game.
table is like 80% Alan Keating's, right?
Right.
So that's
right.
So he's decided to go the other way with it.
Mhm.
Which recently Tom Dwan had a tweet conversation with somebody like Alan Keating is a pro, and the guy was like, "How do you know Tom?" And Tom's like, "I've known him for 15 years. I know he's a pro." So I don't know what people really
that's very odd
are doing
to hear.
Yeah. It's pretty odd.
Yeah.
But Tom Dwan is not there, and Alan Keating is. They let him stay. So not quite a Tom Dwan level pro, I guess.
They very much let him stay. He's always welcome to every game, I kind of think,
Well, to be fair, and I think something you said is that you heard from some reputable source that Keating is very much capable of playing pro-level poker, but chooses to play like Spewy because it's more fun to him and he's rich.
Yeah, and I that's what I heard. I don't know how much I really believe that kind of a thing, but it's possible. I don't really know anything. It's hard to distinguish between what people say because they want to keep the whales in the game, so you're very complimentary to the whales, versus what they really think. And they may think the thing that Tom said when he says he's a pro, maybe Dwan really means that. But
he might.
I can certainly spin a tale where Dwan doesn't mean that at all, and he's saying that because he never wants Keating to leave, and so he's complimentary to him, and that's very common in this world.
Yeah, but it kind of. I don't know. The context of it was such that he didn't have to say it even to make Keating happy or anything. So it wasn't like he was asked if Keating was a pro. It was he volunteered the information. So it's kind of interesting. I don't know. Maybe he is. Who knows? But he just plays wild ranges. I mean, it's just like, and I don't have a ton of Keating experience watching a lot of Keating, but watching The Big Game, the Poker Stars, The Big Game, the first hand of that whole thing is just like everything he does is so bad. But it might just be that those stakes are completely meaningless to him and he doesn't give a shit. I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't understand if they're meaningless to him, why he's even playing then.
I agree.
What's
just
the point then?
Go buy a soccer team instead.
Right. Really. Like do something else with your time if you don't care. Like, what are we doing? It doesn't make any sense to me at all. I don't know what it's about, but whatever. He gets to live his life. He seems like a chill dude.
He does. He seems like he would be great to have in the game from like a personal perspective. He seems like he's just fun, good for the game.
Absolutely.
Does not get upset at all. Is chill
I would not
as fuck.
Threaten to punch him on most days.
And having played with you live many times, it's like a 50-50 proposition if Jonathan over the course of a session is going to threaten to punch somebody with like that angry look in his eyes. You're often picking on the biggest guy at the table too.
It's just after the third Mountain Dew gets into my system, I just I know, feel a little like extreme, I'm ready to show somebody something. My fucking John Hancock, that's fist number 1 and fist number 2. John and Hancock.
Great. You came up with a really good plan though, which is like every time you started getting angry after your third Mountain Dew, you had brought a skateboard and you would go outside in the parking lot and you would do some sick ollies and grinds.
Yeah.
And it would make you just chill down, bro. Catch some gnar and chill down and you'd be fine, good to go.
I find if you do the ollies and you say extreme as you do it, it actually does. It has a nice calming effect. It's like a warm milk for a small child.
Yeah, but you have to say it with the knowledge that you're not pronouncing the first E, right? You're starting with the X.
Yeah, extreme. You have to think that. Big X, capital X, basically.
Yeah.
It's like Malcolm X in reverse.
What?
There it is. Yes.
I don't understand what that means, but let's just move on to the hand.
Okay, all right. I can
let's
explain
move on to
it,
the
but
hand.
Fine. It's a really big hand.
This hand was suggested by Spirit Airlines, not the airline, a person on Discord who goes by that name.
Maybe the airline.
It might be the airline. They put a Z at the end, but they're known to do wacky stuff, like say that the flight costs $15 and it really costs $280.
Only
But
if you want the amenities like a seat
only if
and
you want to
on the
go
plane.
on the flight. Yeah,
We'll sell you a
I've
ticket
never
for
flown
15, but I've flown them, I think, twice in my life, and each time, the first time I was like, never again, ever. And then I did it again like several years later, and I was like, oh my God, I'm really never again. And now I've learned and will not do it.
it's
in
just
any
like
scenario,
it's just like
basically.
Helmuth, right? Where you keep telling me I hate Helmuth and I'm too hard on Helmuth, and then he does something, and you're like, I want fucking Helmuth to die. Like you freak the fuck out. It's like,
Die is a little strong.
yeah,
Come on.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
hate him more than me, but let's get into
No,
the hand.
you always say this, and then he does something, and you react
Well,
way
I
worse
guess
than I do.
He hasn't done anything in a long time. He's fine.
He's a great guy. I love him. All right.
He hasn't threatened to
Anyway.
sue us in like a decade. Almost a
It's
decade.
been a while since he threatened to sue us. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel a little bit, unloved.
Sad. Oh, yeah.
All right.
Exactly.
All right. So it's the 1K, 2K game. So we need the
Okay.
4K straddle, or else there's not enough money in the pot. So we have the 4K straddle from Alan Keating.
Right.
We're going to start with a player named Rahul, who we know nothing about. We did some cursory research and didn't figure out anything.
He's from India
really at
and
all.
he's wealthy. That's all we know.
He's wealthy is a pretty easy one.
Yeah.
When he's playing this game, he's got 1.35 million in his stack. He opens to 15K plus one with 8-7 of spades. That all seems fine.
Yeah.
Thomas, who's like the masked man, who nobody knows who he is, right?
Yeah. It's weird, honestly.
He's on the button. He's got 354K, and he's got ace of spades and the 6 of hearts, and he decides to call. That's bad.
What?
It doesn't matter. Garbage. human.
Horrible play.
Stanley
Anyway.
Tang, founder of DoorDash, has a beautiful hand in the small blind and 1.1 million. He's got king queen of hearts.
So pretty.
In a game like this where people are so splashy, does this feel like a 3-bet or a call to you? Obviously, it's never a fold.
Oh, we never would fold in a million years. I think I probably lean 3-bet more than call, but I think call is fine, totally
Yeah.
fine. The splashiness is fine, but 3-bet is nice. We might be able to get heads up. We might be able to take it down. We might be able to get heads up. We get more money in with a good hand. Where I mean, for God's sake, the guy has ace-6 offsuit. How is he ever going to be able to play a big pot with us? Like he has to go. The flop has to have 2 6s in it. He's got to flop at least 2 pair to be able to play. I know that's not rule. I'm talking about Thomas here, but
Yeah.
But still, like that's the kind of hands that are getting involved. Like we actually have a real hand here. So I think 3-betting is totally cool, and I think we should lean towards it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree with that.
Okay.
But I think calling is totally fine too, and that's what Stanley does. We got Brandon in the big blind, also going to be a garbage human. King 10 off. Who cares?
Brandon Steven.
Alan Keating is in the straddle. He's got 1.18 million. He's got 9-10 of spades. He makes the call. It's a gorgeous hand. It's gorgeous.
Nice to close the action with this hand.
Yes, it is.
Really nice.
Yes, it is. And of course, in a game like this, pre-flop, there has been no 3-bet yet. There is $77,000
Well, yeah,
in the pot heading to the flop.
that's
which
going to
is
happen.
The 4 of diamonds, the jack of spades. Oh, the 4 of spades. Why did I write diamonds?
I don't know.
It's spades.
Yeah, it's
The
definitely
4 of
spades.
spades, the jack of spades, and the 8 of hearts. So
Did
the
you say what
relevant
Raul
hands,
had? Did you say
the
Raul's
7,
hand?
8 of spades.
Okay. No, yeah.
So the relevant hands are Rahul's hand with 7, 8 of spades, so middle pair and a flush draw, and Keating's hand with 9, 10 of spades, which is what they used to call an up and down straight draw and a flush draw.
That's right.
I've been watching a little bit of the 2003 World Series of Poker. I'm gonna be honest, and
what a
they
gift.
use phrases like that, and oh my god, I cannot believe the coverage and the plays they made.
Of
Different
course.
story though.
Yeah.
So nobody else's hand is going to matter. I mean, Stanley Tang
Right.
has sort of something. He's got King Queen of Hearts with the 8 of Hearts out there and a Jack. It's like
I mean,
tiny bit
okay,
of
maybe.
something.
Not terrible.
Yeah,
Out of position. The rest of the hand, though. It's not great.
yeah, it's not ideal. It checks to Rahul. I think there's a pretty strong argument that Keating could bet if he wants to with
I
such
think
a
he could.
powerful hand.
He's not afraid of anything, right?
Like
Like,
he's
he can just go and, okay, once in a while I'm up against a better flush draw, but, like, it's fine. But there's enough people in this pot, too. how many people are in this pot? There's like 5 ways or something.
Yeah.
Although by
5.
the time it gets to Keating, 2 people have already checked, right? Brandon
Yeah.
Stevens checked and Stanley Tang has checked. But there's still
Yeah.
2 guys behind him. I think it's fine to bet, but I think it's okay to check and see what develops. A free card isn't the end of the world, and we can always check raise this hand too. Like this hand is a great candidate to check raise, depending on the action. We get to see all the action play out in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm
So
cool
he
with
checks.
either. Yeah.
He ends up checking. Rahul bets 40K. That's very reasonable. He has the lead in the hand. He has middle pair, which could be good, and in fact is. And he's
Yeah.
got the flush draw with it. He's drawing dead against nothing. It's pretty sweet.
It's an incredible flop for both these guys. Just a wildly strong flop. Yeah.
It is. Thankfully, Thomas's adventure is over. Stanley Tang doesn't choose to do some fancy 2 backdoor thing. Brandon Stevens out, and now
Yeah.
it's back to Keating.
Okay.
Does being heads up and guaranteed to be heads up make you want to check raise more or less than if there were at least one other player who had entered the pot after
Cool
the bet?
question. I think it makes you want to check raise a little bit more. Being heads up especially out of position in heads up, means that a lot of times if we just check call, there's going to be a really big bet on the turn, and sometimes more than the pot. These guys now bet more than pot a lot on the turn. And it's not that we would have to fold necessarily with a hand this strong. Like we could call, but it makes it hard to squeeze excess value out when we get there by playing it as a call here. It's not impossible, but it's harder. So that also, if there are more players in, then it's more likely that someone could have a better flush draw than we do. When it's only one player, it's the guy who opened under the gun. So I mean, he can have the ace-6 of spades here, of course, but there's only one player who can have that flush draw, and 4 spades are dead already because we have 2 and there's 2 on the board. It's less to be concerned about. That makes me a little more interested in playing for potentially stacks right here as well, where we're going to be like, if we do this 4 ways, and the pot's bigger and that's nice, but more of the time when we get it in, we're getting in it against hands that have us dominated, flush draw wise. So
Yeah,
which is
I think
potentially problematic.
I think I feel the opposite, but not strongly.
Okay, why do you feel the opposite?
I think if we're multi-way here, there's a lot of value in cleaning up equity, ending up heads up or just winning the pot. Like Queen Jack is just going to fold a lot of the time, depending on the player. If we make a sizable check raise, and when we're heads up, if Rahul has Queen Jack, he might not fold in this specific spot. But like if Rahul had bet and Thomas had called, and one of them has Queen Jack, that player is probably folding, right?
Yeah.
So I think we have a little bit more fold equity 3 ways because of what we're representing.
That's true.
We get to this isn't huge, but we get to clean up the other 9-10, so we don't have to chop the pot if the straight comes in.
I like
That's not
that.
bad.
I like that a lot, actually. And we actually might fold out if we make it a big. No, I just don't think a better flush draw is going to fold on the flop.
Maybe a Queen X of spades. Maybe a Queen X of spades that is doesn't have a straight draw with it. We block the straight draw. Actually, they all don't have straight draws with it because we block the potential Queen X of spades straight draws.
Yeah.
So
maybe
that folds.
Maybe
that would be nice.
Maybe not. I don't know. Maybe though.
We also have a much better chance of getting an overpair to fold in both scenarios, both heads up and multi-way, on a later street if we check raise than if we just call.
Right. When you're trying to tell the story of having a monster, usually you have to tell it twice. Not this whole story, but you have to show strength twice. Like if you show strength once, people are like, you could be bluffing. When you follow through, that's a much more powerful thing. And it doesn't always work, of course, but it's much more likely to, right? People are like, oh, okay, this is real. Right. So there's that. The other thing which I think points to a check raise in either case is the fact that we have 10 high right now. Like we don't have any kind of a made hand. And so if the situation was reversed and we had the 8-7 of spades and Rahul had the 9-10 of spades, I think it's a check call mostly because we already have a made hand, right? We actually have showdown value, but we are miles from showdown value. We know we're losing right now. Not that it's the end of the world to call sometimes with this hand, but I think in both cases, I prefer a check raise to a call. I like your reasons, though, for doing it multi-way. I like cleaning up some of that, like some of the hands that we'd either be chopping with or we could actually chase out gut shots, too. If the bet was small enough on the flop, Brandon Stevens might call with his king 10 sometimes because he's got a gutter to the
you mean
9.
Queen 10?
Right?
If he had queen 10.
Oh, he doesn't have queen 10. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
So, but there's certain hands that these guys could have where the gutters could come in. We can just get rid of all that. So if we get there, it's all ours and it can't get counterfeited, or we end up having to chop because of a bad card or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I like
not
it better
that bad
multi-way
with gutters
because strangely, I also think we have less fold equity heads up. Like I said, I think Rahul's probably going to have to peel once with queen jack, whereas we can get rid of queen jack multi-way. And fold equity would be a big reason to raise here. Also, like when we're multi-way, we could be a little scarier because everybody's like, wow, he's raising against multiple players. He's got like a pretty strong hand. But when you're heads up, you can really start to narrow in on somebody's range and be like, there's not that many strong hands right now on this board, right? Like there's like jack 8 suited and sets, and Keating probably doesn't have jack jack, and he might not have 8-8. So
Yeah.
makes it tougher to rep something super strong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's fair.
So actually, I think I could see the reasons for a check raise. I'm fine with a call. I'm really pretty torn on it.
I just feel like, man, what are we going to do on the turn? So Raul with his 8-7 of spades, pair and a flush draw, bets 40K. We call. The pot's going to have like what in it now going to the turn?
It's going to have 157 if we call.
So if we call and he bets 175 on the turn, what are we doing? What's our plan?
Well, we're very deep, so we could check raise. We could rep a true monster then. That's a much scarier check raise spot than the flop.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's also a much more expensive check raise spot. Like where if he holds on, if he's got an overpair and holds on, and he did just bet into 1 million people, by the way. So it feels like Raul has a hand, by the way. Like, isn't just like taking a shot. He bet into like 4 other players, right? So we always think he's got a like top pair or better. Like what?
Yeah.
King Jack is like the worst hand he ever has here. Maybe Queen Jack suited. Maybe Jack 10 suited. But like a Jack is like the worst thing he ever has on the flop, right? Or the nut flush draw or something. So I mean, he probably has a pretty good hand and may not be so interested in folding on the turn. Now, that would be true for the flop, too, by the way. If we check raise the flop, that's also true.
Yeah, I know. But I think you just get more stronger, folds on the turn.
You do, for sure.
You look stronger.
It looks very strong.
Well, let's see what happens, because Keating calls. 4 of spades, jack of spades, 8 of hearts. Keating has 9-10 of spades. Rahul has 7-8 of spades. They both have monsters. The pot's 157K. The turn is the ace of diamonds, which does nothing for these hands, but is always consequential in a pot that's getting larger. My immediate thought is like, oh, Rahul, while not loving this card, sort of loves this card.
Yeah.
Because now he can potentially get Keating off of a jack, which is great.
I mean, the only way Raul should have hit the ace is if that ace makes him ace-jack, so he makes top 2, or if he has the nut flush draw, right? Otherwise, it should not matter. I guess you got ace-ace also.
Or ace-8 suited or ace-4 suited.
Yeah, I don't know if he's betting those or not on the flop 5 ways.
I think they play easier as a bet than as a check.
Maybe. Anyway, so maybe he can have this, but he doesn't have those very often, right? Compared to, I don't know if he's always opening ace-8 suited under the gun or ace-4 suited under the gun. I'm just not sure. Some people are, some people aren't, right?
He should be.
Yeah.
Those are good hands.
They are.
You should open those hands.
They are.
Anyway, the ace...
Still, the ace doesn't make that many. Like, it isn't like he ever has... Like, a lot of times in these cases, if you're c-bet and you get called, you can have ace-king, you can have ace-queen, you can have ace-10, because you were just c-betting. That could be the story, right? Oh, but I got there on the turn. But that is never the story now, right? That's all I'm saying. Like,
I mean,
we already had to have something to bet.
With the depth of stacks, it's possible that Rahul could have ace-x of hearts type hands, one that have 2 back doors with them.
You really think he's betting into 4 other opponents with that? I doubt it.
Some players are. I do that sometimes. Maybe not 4 opponents. Maybe max out at 3 on that.
Yeah, that's like so many people. And it's not like the board is great for you. It's jack 8. What is it? Jack 8-3? I mean, it's not that.
Jack 8-4, but it's not usually great for anybody, right? It's it's hard to have a super strong hand.
But when there's 4 opponents, right there, it's like you're just not getting you're not getting enough folds, I think, on that board. I think if you're betting there, I doubt he's betting the ace-x.
I think you've learned nothing from Sean Winter. I think despite taking Sean Winter's course on how to Sean Winter it and Sean Wintering it all winter, which is the name of his second book.
It's a very good book. It's very good.
Yeah.
It's not that I haven't
I don't
learned
think you're Sean
anything.
Wintering it.
We're talking about what I think what these guys are doing, and I think like most guys are not Sean Wintering, right? Most guys
But you were
aren't
talking
doing
about
that.
what you would do. The verbiage you were using was referring
That's
to
true.
how you feel
That's
about
true. I
playing
would not.
these hands.
I don't think I would bet into 4 other players with the ace X of hearts. That is correct.
And that's why the game doesn't run when you're on the board, because you're a fucking nit. Anyway,
Fair enough.
so there's 157k in the pot. It is the ace of diamonds. The upshot
Right.
is that it's a range advantage card for Rahul, even though it doesn't hit him that frequently. It hits him more than it hits Keating, right? It only really hits Keating.
Yeah.
I guess
No.
maybe it hits them at a similar pace.
Keating
but
makes a bunch
if-
of aces up here. He can have ace 8. He can have ace 4. He can have ace
Yeah.
jack.
Yeah, it
Depends
depends
on
on
what
what Rahul's
Rahul-
betting on the flop, I guess.
And Keating can have the nut flush draw and have just nailed the ace that way.
He can. Okay, it's relatively neutral, but as Keating checks, as Rahul, I would definitely be thinking I can probably get him to fold
yeah.
the jack now.
Let's try.
So let's just do
try.
that. Let's just do
And-
that. And if he calls, I have lots of outs.
And if Keating has a better 8, I can fold that out too. Like that's fine,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, or 9s or 10s, because Keating was closing the action after Rahul bet, so I think he would definitely call with 9s or 10s if he didn't 3-bet them pre-flop.
And as Raul, I think we can, depending on what the river card is, we can really shut down after this card if we get called again. We can decide not to bet again. We sometimes win anyway with our showdown values, and of course we can improve a lot too. So there's lots of, and there could be other scary cards we decide to bluff. But I think like we can bet here and not put more money in if we don't want to. Like that's okay because we do have some showdown value.
Well, Rahul goes for the scary bet. He bets 140 into 157, going big, being like, get your fucking jack out of my pot.
Right.
Get away from me, Alan Keating, you rich man. All right.
Here we are.
Should it work? Should it work?
No, our hand is a little too good to. We're getting still a pretty. We're getting better than 2-1 to call, right? Like we're calling. But
Do we
it's
win?
not great.
Do we win enough? I mean, let's see.
Not without implied odds. We do not.
Yeah.
We only have 12 outs, right? Wait.
Yeah.
No, we have more than 12 outs. Sorry.
No, we have 12 outs. We have 12 outs against
6
what he's
plus
repping.
No, don't we? Oh, what do you mean? Don't we have 15 outs? We
Oh,
have
wait,
any
you're right. We have
spade,
15.
Any spade and any straightening card.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's-
15.
normally we have
15 against
15
what he's
outs.
repping.
So actually
So we're
getting 2-1 is not too bad. It's pretty close anyway.
We're
If
getting
we believe
just
there's
under what we need to be getting.
right, and if we believe there's any implied odds, which there clearly is, especially on the straightening cards, maybe not on the spades. The spades are like,
Yeah.
he might fold. But on
The
if we hit
spades
the
have some reverse implied odds, too.
that is true. We may want to play the spades. I mean, can we really play them carefully? I don't know what to do. We'll worry about that later.
Yeah.
But we hit one of our 6 straight outs. I mean, usually that's and like the straight outs are almost always just magical, right? Like they're I guess he could have king queen of spades exactly and destroy us. But otherwise no, not even king queen of spades. Sorry.
No,
there's no way.
It would only be
There's no way.
It would only be king 10, which we block, so that's
Okay.
cool.
Yeah, that's excellent. So we don't have to worry about that. Oh yeah, so we got 6 ones to almost certain because we know he's got a good hand almost always, right? He bet into everyone and then he bet again when we called. He usually has a pretty good hand. He's likely to bet again on the river. Turns out the hand that Raul actually has, the 8-7 of spades, maybe not on this board, but
Yeah.
with his range, he's betting his range a lot here. So yeah, we have to call because there's got to be implied odds, and like you said, we're probably getting just almost good enough anyway of a price, almost. By the way, if we're up against like the ace X of spades that barreled twice, 10s and 9s might be good sometimes. We could hit a 10 and win.
Well, not against the ace X of spades. The ace on the turn.
Well, okay, you're right. The king X of spades, king queen of spades, or something like that.
King queen of spades, sure. We didn't consider raising, though, in this conversation. Do we think
Right.
raising is a good option?
You know, when that ace comes and he bets it again when he just doesn't have to. Like if he has kings, he can just check that back, right? Like that probably is a good card for him because he should either have enough showdown value where he doesn't need to bluff it, or that card improves him in some way, right? So I would think when he chooses to bet, he's mostly strong here. He's actually among his hands. He's actually among the very weakest of his hands that he can have with the 8-7 of spades on this board. But like mostly, I think he's got a pretty strong hand. Do you disagree?
No, I think so. I would be curious to know what Rahul would do with this exact hand if Keating made it 400K.
Yeah, me too. In position, he probably holds on. It calls and sees a river and hopes he improves, right?
Yeah.
Which would be not a good spot really, because There's
It's a
very few
horrible
good cards
spot.
for Raul because it turns out a spade would be death. It's going to be hard to hold on if Keating fires again on the river. Anyway, it's going to be, you need an 8. You got to basically have to hit another 8. Hit
It's
a
like the
2-outer.
worst. It's one of the worst spots in no limit hold'em when you have
Yeah.
a hand like Rahul has and you do bet the turn with like just fold please, but I still have a good hand and they raise and they're like fuck I have
know.
to call, but I feel horrible. I hate
But I have
everything.
to call because I have all these extra outs. So I
Yeah.
just have to call, and I'm going to lose a lot, and I'm going to fold the river a lot, and sometimes I'm getting bluffed, and it really sucks. But here we are. This is part of the range
Yep.
that calls. So be it.
Anyway, Keating just calls, so Rahul does not have to worry about that.
Yep.
Keating has 9-10 of spades on 4 of spades, jack of spades, 8 of hearts, ace of diamonds. Rahul has 7-8 of spades on that same board. They're playing the same board. The pot is 437K.
Yes, it is.
The river is, as it often is on the breakdown because it makes interesting things, the river is the ding, ding, ding card to
The
bring
dingest.
action.
Yeah.
It is the 7 of diamonds, not a
Wow.
spade, but it makes Keating the nuts, and Rahul makes 2 pair
I mean,
with the
wow.
8 and 7 of spades.
Wow, wow, wow. Wow, 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 wow.
Okay, Alan Keating, what are you going to do? You just made the nuts.
It does look like our opponent has a strong hand here. Like he's got a strong range here for sure. I think our opponent's range is basically comprised of mostly missed better flush draws, like the king, queen of spades, and strong made hands, like
Yeah.
ace jack and things like that. I think either way we want to check and let both sides of that range fire away. And there are some hands that will just have checkbacks. Maybe the nut flush draw with the aces, the ace x of spades just checks it back sometimes. Fine.
I think
I don't know
for sure.
I don't think we're necessarily getting. I don't know if that's calling us anyway if we make a big bet here. Maybe it is.
Yeah.
Maybe not. But I think most of the range. It's most of the range is betting. Let's let him bet when we have the nuts. If we think he's going to bet, let's give him a chance to put some money in the pot.
I think
do you
that's
think?
well said. I agree with that. And that's
Cool.
what Alan Keating thinks as well.
Hmm.
So he checks.
Good.
As Rahul, do we have to bet this hand?
We
We
really
have middle and other middle pair. It's not that good.
Okay. The only thing we're targeting is the nut flush draw that turned an ace. Right. I don't know what else we can
Yeah.
ever target if we bet. There's nothing else that we.
I
can
mean, Keating
reasonably
not
call us
believing
with.
with a jack. Keating just not believing us with a jack.
I mean, we bet into 4 other players on the flop
Yeah.
and continued on the turn, and then we're going to continue on the river. I would not count on Keating not believing us with the jack. I just wouldn't believe that. I just wouldn't count on it. I think we're only targeting. Is that enough to target? Is the question. I don't think it is. From just a quick thought. Maybe we have to bet. Maybe I'm being too nitty by saying maybe it's not.
I
enough
don't
to
know,
target.
man. It is like Keating only has an ace if he has 2 pair, which beats us, which is
Right.
not folding, and
Or the ace x of spades.
of spades, which is hard to get a call from because it blocks spades.
It blocks spades, and it's probably not like a big ace x of spades because Keating could have 3-bet that. He doesn't have ace king or
Yeah.
ace queen of spades almost ever here, right? So,
Right.
like, what are we talking about here? Is he going to call with the ace 3 of spades on the river? I'm not saying it's impossible that he won't. He's Alan Keating. He might put the call in, but it's a weird story where what can he beat? He can beat the king queen of spades and almost nothing else, right? When he does that.
Yeah, I kind of think it's a check. I don't think
I
you're
think
being
it
too
is, too.
nitty.
I think it's a check too. I think it's like if the fact that there were 5 players that saw the flop to me changes all these ranges so much. Changes Raul's betting range so much, really, and then everything else follows from that. If they were heads up on the flop, everything's different, right? You could definitely bet this for value now. Like Raul doesn't have to have a strong hand. Keating's going to be bluff catching so much more and all that. But I think the bluff catching goes mostly out the window here. And if Alan can only bluff catch with his mediocre aces, which is usually the best hand that is going to be able to call it, he can call us with that we win. I don't know if he's even going to bluff catch with those. Yeah, we should check.
I think you're right, but that's not what's going to happen, obviously.
Okay.
Before we get to what happens, Jonathan, why don't you recap what the players have and what the board is?
That's great. We're trying to do that more, aren't we, Grant? Because
Yeah.
we're trying to be thoughtful and considerate. Well, let me tell you. Raul, who opened under the gun, has 8-7 of spades, excuse me, the
So
suited
you
connector.
do that. You,
Oh,
you
shut
mix
up.
up the eights
Shut
and the
up.
aces.
I
Chris Jones
fixed
pointed it
it.
out on.
Chris Jones is
he showed the
wrong.
captions.
He's
There's
wrong.
evidence.
Raul has 8-7 of spades for the suited connector, and he flopped pair and flush draw. Has now made 2 pair on the river. Alan Keating has the 9-10 of spades. The board is Jack 8-4 with 2 spades. The turn is the ace, and the river is now the offsuit 7, making Alan Keating the absolute nuts, as people like to say, instead of just saying the nuts, which is the same fucking thing. He makes the nuts. Well, of course, as we said, Rolla makes 2 pair, 8s and 7s.
Good job.
Alan Keating with the straight.
Quick question about your nitpick on absolute nuts.
Yeah.
I think it's possible that they mean unchoppable nuts when they say that, and it's different.
They say it a lot, and they say it usually not even on the river, and they say it when it's anytime it's the nuts. So the absolute nuts should mean I can't lose no matter what comes. Like it's like I just flopped a straight flush, so I have the absolute nuts. Something like that's the absolute nuts, right? It's unkillable. But
so I think on the river that would also apply to the nut flush on an unpaired board.
Sure. Oh, you're saying that's the absolute nuts, not just the nuts.
Yeah, because you won't chop no matter what.
But it's just the nuts on that board. Doesn't matter. Everyone can look at the board, and everyone can look at the board. The nuts is only one hand, and it's the nut flush, which is unchoppable. It's repetitive to say absolute there. There's no reason to say it.
I'm just saying if you're trying to find a
unchoppable.
reason, if you're trying to find a way to use it properly,
Yeah.
I think that would potentially be a way to use it properly. Whereas Alan Keating does not have the absolute nuts here because he could chop.
Okay, I think using the word absolute there is just terrible. You could say unchoppable nuts. That's fine. But let's not say absolute unless we mean no one can ever catch up with me, and it's not the river yet. You know,
I'm going to say whatever the hell I want. You can't police. You can't police
fucking everybody
all
else,
of the
buddy.
adjectives that I use.
Just
okay?
use-
You're not
just-
the fucking adjective police.
Use literally as figuratively. Nobody cares. Everybody does it. Whatever.
You know I don't do that. I'm the guy who polices the word unique. Okay, I
you
know
do.
what I'm talking about.
It's you're pretty unique in that way too. The way you police it.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, he hates that so much because unique
I know.
is not dimensional. It's categorical, people. I've heard that a lot.
Anyway,
So here we are. You upset? You upset?
What?
You
What?
seem upset.
Rahul bets 200K into 437. He's just
Okay. I mean,
I mean,
he bets
we
small
can't
enough
find a
that he's
reason-
trying to target that ace, right? He's trying to say, like,
Right.
trying to make it callable, but I don't even like that. If it's Alan Keating, we should go bigger to get the hero call, not smaller to get the hero call, I think.
well,
But go
that's
on.
kind of interesting. That's interesting. Anyway, he bets 200K.
But he should check.
Keating's got
Okay.
exactly 1 million in his stack.
Huh. How
What's
did that
the plan?
happen? I mean, let's just shove. Fuck it. I mean, it's all the same, isn't it? If he's going to call 600K, is he not going to call 1 million? Is it really that different? It's so strong either way. I assume we're getting a fold, not just from this hand, but from most of his range. But fuck it. Maybe he's got a set of aces or a set of jacks or something like that, and he'll actually call. Fuck it. I say let's go for it. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so. That's what Keating does. So we
Cool.
love how Alan Keating played this hand. We've pretty much loved every single thing he's done.
We thought he could check raise the flop, but yeah, we still love
Yeah.
how he's played the hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's played it
I
well.
actually was okay with the check call on the flop more than you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm okay
so-
with it too, but the problem was, of course, there's some turn spots that are problematic. But anyway, here we are. We got there. It
All
feels
right.
good.
So this should be the end of the hand.
It
Rahul
feels
should
like
be
it.
like, well, fuck. Now, maybe the Keating legend has gotten in Rahul's head because he starts tanking. You know, and
Mhm.
Keating is such a loose, aggressive player
Yeah,
that maybe I can consider calling with this hand.
right.
I don't think that's accurate, though, because Keating, like, he's a thinking player post-flop usually. Maybe not every time, but usually.
He is.
Like, this is, from a distribution perspective, this is a fucking nightmare. This is a nightmare hand from a distribution perspective. We
yeah.
block spades. Not that it really matters because it's 2 pair spades.
Well, but we
So
block
that's the-
things. We block things like the king 8 of spades, which Keating might turn into a bluff on the river, in theory at least, right? Like he's got a pair, so he blocks the set. He blocks, I mean, that's all. But he has spades in his hand, which would be, yeah. We block that a little bit, which we don't want to do.
We don't want spades. But beyond that, from just a pure value distribution perspective, we open preflop and bet all 3 streets. So we have extremely strong hands in our range, including top set, middle set, bottom set, all the sets that have come that are reasonable. We have 9-10 in our
suited.
range.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we have 9-10 in our range. We have better 2 pair than this. We have ace jack. We have ace
Oh
8.
my God.
We have ace 4.
We don't even
Like-
think this should have been a bet. Anyway, before Keating check raise, we were thinking it wasn't a bet. We thought it was too thin. So like, we don't even we think this should be if you're going to bet it, it's at the absolute bottom of our betting range, and we got spades in our hand. Like, I don't know why we even consider calling with this hand. This feels like a snap fold. Like, oh geez, that sucks. We're losing
I mean,
a lot.
We could go about the discussion of what are Keating's bluffs how does he even have a bluff here? But we don't really need to because the distribution is so bad that I think that's enough to fold. We might as well have the conversation though, because we're here and that's our job. Can you think of bluffs for Keating?
On the flop, what were the two spades?
The jack and the 4.
It was the jack. Let's see if could Keating have like the 8-9 of spades or the
Rahul
8-10
has
of
the 8 of
spades?
spades in his hand.
Fuck. God damn it. Yeah, that makes it tougher. Okay, the queen. I'm just trying to come up with a way to get there that
King, queen of spades turns the gut shot.
No. You want to have a 10 in your hand so you can, because then you're blocking the nuts. You want to have the 9 or the 10 in your hand. So you have like queen 9 of spades or queen 10 of spades. That's how you get here. That's how you get here. You've got a blocker.
Queen,
Queen isn't blocking.
Okay, so king 10 or king 9 of spades. Sure.
Yeah. Or queen 10 or queen 9. Yeah. Those are the hands. Okay, that's 4 combos that. And by the way, I don't believe for a second Keating is turning all 4 of those combos into bluffs. I don't know if he's turning any of them into bluffs, but even if he is, he's turning, 2 of them max into bluffs? But let's even say he's turning all 4 into bluffs. Keating has, I guess we might say to ourselves, is he really calling with 9-10 that isn't 9-10 of spades on the turn for that much out of position? We may think he isn't, right?
Do we think he's not moving in with a set of 8s or jacks? He doesn't have those hands that much, I guess, because he
jacks especially.
He just flatted pre-flop.
He can have them a little, but he can have 8s. He can have 8s a reasonable amount of the time. Jacks are almost always a 3-bet, I would think, right?
I mean, 5-6 also gets there, by the way. 5-6 of spades would make sense.
I mean, would Keating check raise 5-6 of spades all in for $1 million? I don't know. It's strong. It's very. I guess if we think like, there's 4 combos of the nuts, and then we think like the sets are going to call us like jacks and 8s and aces are all going to call us. Where I guess we have to do it right.
Well, yeah. I mean, if Keating only has 5-6 of spades and 9-10 of spades for value, then you can start to see Rahul's thought process if that's really true.
Yeah.
I don't really believe that Keating is that short on value.
Also, can Keating be moving in, have slow play to set the whole way and is now going for it, especially with the smaller bet size on the river? Like, if Rahul had fucking 9-10, it's very reasonable to think he'd bet a lot more than 200K into whatever it was, 480 or whatever, right? Like he'd go for more value. It looks like, I mean, Keating probably has at least an ace, if not aces up here, a reasonable amount of the time, right? Like, that's why we didn't like the bet on the river for Rahul, because we're like, what are you getting called by, man? Like, your hand isn't strong enough for this. So Rahul probably goes bigger if he's got the straight. So then, Keating can probably make these plays with the sets and the smaller straights and stuff like that pretty comfortably and hope to get called by like ace-jack. I mean, he'd be targeting ace-jack very clearly if he has a set of 8s, right?
So ultimately, it is kind of a mucky spot once you think about what Keating is actually moving in with. If it's the case that he's only moving in with 5-6 of spades and 9-10 of spades, then you start to have an argument. But at the same point, we still have all of our distribution arguments against calling. Like, we can find calls here, and it doesn't have to be this hand.
There's so many other hands. Almost every hand that we bet is a better call than this hand, I would guess. Yeah. Right? I mean, ace-jack is still just a bluff catcher, right? Like, we don't think Alan would ever move in with ace-8 here. So ace-jack...
No, of course. But as we've said, and this is not for you, Jonathan, but just for everybody, like, distribution is not just used to find out where you are in your distribution. And you can understand against a polarized range that you're losing with a huge chunk of your distribution, but you call with some of that chunk and you fold some of that chunk, so you're not overcalling or overfolding. And this would be part of overcalling if we call with 8-7 of spades. And like, so we can call ace-jack and fold 8-7 even though they're losing to the same things.
Right. Because we need to call with some things, so we're going to pick the better hands, not the worse hands to do it with.
Yeah.
Right. Because once in a while, by the way, and we see this, if you call with the wrong part of your distribution, you lose to a hand that you would have beat had you called with the right part of your distribution. Yeah. You think it's all the same. Sometimes it isn't. Sometimes weird shit happens and it isn't. Sometimes Keating shows up with a weird jack-7 and he's like turning it into a bluff or something.
Right.
And then we call with ace-jack and we get to win the whole thing. Like, that's rare, admittedly, but it's not impossible. So
it's not impossible.
There's that too. Yeah.
Anyway, that's how Keating wins the second largest pot in televised poker history.
Because Rahul fucking calls. Did we say that Rahul calls? Rahul calls the million. He thinks for a long time and calls with the 8-7, which feels like just not right. And Keating just comfortably turns over the nuts and is like, yep, No problem. And Keating,
That
I
must
think,
have
has
been a good
played.
feeling.
Oh my God. Keating has played in, I think, 3 of the 5 biggest pots in Hustler Casino Live history, which I think are also, those 5 pots are also the biggest pots in televised cash game poker history. I think all 5 of them are. I mean, we're calling it televised. It's not really on TV, but, whatever.
Well, whatever.
Video. But I think
Widely
he's played 3
viewed.
of them. Yeah, and like the Dwan hand, the Queen's hand from last year is the number 1 because that was $3 million.
Mhm.
And then Keating is like 2, 3, and 5 on the list. And he won all 3 of them, by the way.
Maybe he is a pro.
Yeah, all 3 of them were like just the last few days, too.
Good for him.
Alan Keating.
It's such a good feeling in poker when you bet the river for value and your opponent is thinking and then they start to slide the chips out. It feels so good.
Yeah.
How good must it feel when it's $1 million? When it's $1 million?
I don't know. Alan Keating has so much money. I don't even know if it feels different to him than it feels to us when it's less, It's unclear to me.
Yeah.
But
who knows?
It feels good. Beyond that, I don't know.
You must feel pretty good. Congratulations, Alan Keating.
Enough the Alan Keating hagiography over here.
Oh, Alan Keating. Good job.
I love you. With your locks, your curly locks.
Yeah, exactly. Keating stands. Moving on by ending the podcast.